I just want to welcome everybody to our online CPD session for teachers, neurodiversity in children and how to support them. We are really excited to be offering these training sessions to all schools that we work with. So I'll start by introducing myself. I think I probably might know some of you already. So my name is Rhiannon John, and I am the education team leader here at 2B Enterprising. So you'll probably be more familiar with the name, the program's name, which is The Bumbles of Honeywood. So here at 2B Enterprising, we are really passionate about teaching children enterprise skills and helping them to develop the confidence, creativity and problem-solving abilities they need for the future. We believe that by integrating enterprise education into learning, we can empower the young minds to think critically, work collaboratively, and also turn their ideas into real-world opportunities. Just a little bit of data now from us. We're really proud of what we've achieved here in the last 4 years at 2B Enterprising. Teeny little bit of data that we've collected. I actually think these numbers have probably increased since we made this slide, so it would probably be a little bit higher by now. But we're in 366 schools in total. That's across Wales and England also. We have got 171 corporate engagement partners. So you'll probably know them as the business partners. So they're the people who fund the programme in order for us to do it. We've actually done 1,981 total sessions since launch, and we launched about 4 years ago. I reckon that's probably pushing 2,000 by now. We're probably almost there. And we've engaged with, this is a huge staggering amount, with 55,517 children in total. So again, I think that number's probably gone up a little bit as well. So yeah, as I said, we're really proud of our achievements here. Right, so on to today's session then. Okay, so we're delighted to have Dr. Alex Richardson with us today. Dr. Richardson is a world-renowned researcher, educator, speaker and published author. She's also the founder director of the UK-based charity Food and Behaviour, also known as FAB. Dr. Richardson specialises in brain health, autism, ADHD and dyslexia. Dr. Richardson is going to share some of her insights and also take questions around neurodiversity, and she's going to focus on a couple of the elements. So the overlap between the different neurodiverse conditions, how teachers can recognise some of the signs, and any tips maybe for some inclusion and behaviour management. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Dr. Alex Richardson. Please cross your fingers for me, because I'm going to try and unshare my screen, and hopefully Alex will be able to share hers. So bear with us. If that doesn't happen, Alex is happy to just talk and then send the link to the PowerPoint after the session. All right, diolch yn fawr. Fingers crossed for me now. So if I unshare. Let's see how I unshare.
Okay. Thank you, Rhiannon, and I can't believe the problems we're having, but can you hear me and see me now? Is the internet? Oh, you seem to be on mute now, Rhiannon, but I'm going to try to share.
Bear with me, Alex. I'm just asking for some advice. Bear with me 1 second. I can see you, Alex.
Oh, good. That's
a presentation. Amazing. Right, I'm going to mute myself and I'm going to leave it up to you.
Can you actually see my slides as well?
I can see. Can everybody else see the slides? Give me a thumbs up. Fab.
Wonderful, fantastic. And we shall see what we can do here. But, oh my goodness, I do wish that IT didn't always let you down when you need it. Right, so if I go into slideshow, neurodiversity, it's something everyone's heard about. But the labels, I've got to start here with the fact that dyslexia, ADHD, dyspraxia, developmental coordination disorder, the autism spectrum, it is now about 1 in 5 of all children. But these diagnoses, they're descriptions, they don't explain.
Sorry, can I just say, can everyone turn off their mute their mics?
I was just going to say, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh,
If everybody make
good.
sure their mics are muted, that's great.
Oh,
Diolch.
no, that's fine. And for those who, oh, bless, thank you all, by the way, of giving your valuable time. And I'll be racing through this because the computer crashed. It isn't the presentation I hoped for, but the co-occurrence between these conditions is key. No child ever, to be honest, neatly fits into any of these pigeonholes. And the core defining features, they're dimensional. They're basically extremes of individual difference is what defines dyslexia, where the focus there is on reading and spelling, and handwriting comes more into the dyspraxia, which is very much neglected, ignored. And the big ones, because they are medical labels, ADHD and the autism spectrum. Now, it's an awful lot of children, and the thing is, in a way, neurodiversity is just a new name for individual differences. And I think all you teachers know no two children are the same. And that's the trouble with these labels. Medical diagnoses, well, they're about identifying a cause so that we can find the appropriate treatment. So to take a classic example, if the test says, and we hope it doesn't, that you have tuberculosis or something, there's a treatment, it'll sort it out. Neurodevelopmental diagnoses are not like that. They're purely descriptive. They tell us nothing about causes, which always reflect biology, individual psychology, and the myriad social influences. And they are, I like the terms umbrella, but also suitcase labels. They need unpacking because of the huge variability, particularly within the overly broadened autistic spectrum, which even the people who devised the diagnoses, in fact, even on the BBC last night, Alan Francis, who presided over the Psychiatric Bible, he recanted in 2013, and he wrote a book called Saving Normal, because it is the case that there are no clear dividing lines between the child who has or doesn't have an autistic spectrum disorder. We've got to recognise that, of course, for rationing and billing, particularly in the States, the labels and the categories, yeah, they're not going to go away. But all of the experts now across psychiatry, psychology, they all acknowledge that trying to treat these things as latent disorders, disabilities, or let alone diseases, it doesn't work. So we've got to find new approaches, but in the meanwhile, schools and you fabulous teachers are having to carry an awful lot of the work that really needs doing across health, education, social services, and even the criminal justice system. I want to flag as well, because this is part of the issue, depression, anxiety. These have become now so common in young children and adolescents, and sleep problems. Absolutely, I will have something to say about this. Eating disorders and so on, but the whole host again of these labels and diagnoses, again, they're descriptions, they're all dimensional. So even things like depression, no two individuals are the same. And I really want to focus on this, because here is where, if only we had enough school nurses and health visitors, because the co-occurring physical health conditions have been overlooked for far too long. In ADHD, particularly in the autism spectrum, now there are some, and things like if it's as flagrant as epilepsy or tic disorders, and some genetic conditions, but absolutely common are issues with the gut. And that's because the gut and the brain are absolutely interconnected. So these issues, we now have Movicol in most classrooms because of the kind of diets that most children are eating. Eating disorders of all kinds, and some of those can be picked up early if people know what to look for, long before a child comes to school or even nursery. And sensory issues I'm going to have something to say about. and you will already know quite a lot about. Immune system. Again, the gut, the immune system, and the brain. They're all interlinked. Why do we treat them separately? And then there are even things like hypermobility and some chronic pain conditions, which we now know are more common in individuals with any of these developmental labels, particularly the autism spectrum, ADHD, but also the ones that medics don't tend to pay much attention to, dyslexia, dyspraxia. And sleep. I'm including two sections here, which I know you schools and teachers will think, well, what can I do about that? Raise awareness. Sleep and diet and exercise, which I've not tried to cover here. But what I want to make clear is that the diagnoses, we need them. Of course we do. But now that it is such a large proportion of children, the whole system, as you know all too well, is breaking down. So we've got to do better with all children, and we've got to try to get some changes to policy and practice, because it can't all rest on the individuals and the teachers and the schools who aren't allowed the budgets. The diagnoses are to do with behaviour. It's the tip of an iceberg, because underneath the behaviour, that's what you can see, that's what you can observe, some measures. But all behaviour depends on what's the individual actually perceiving. So here we come to the sensory processing. What about vision? Is their hearing being assessed? And senses like touch and taste and smell. These are all things which influence behaviour. But senses, well, I put perception here. Well, that depends, of course, on what are you thinking? What's the individual thinking? That depends on their knowledge, their beliefs, and if it's young children, that varies hugely. And all perception, to be honest, is actually to do with action. Are you going to approach or avoid? Are you going to run away or, attack? These kinds of things, very, very basic things. Feelings and emotions are also rather fundamental, and they tend to get parked elsewhere. We talk about behaviour and learning difficulties, and let me say emotional regulation difficulties, they are absolutely something that all of us have to learn. And the environments and situations children are facing now can make that difficult. Emotional regulation. Now, I want to distinguish between feelings, which a lot of, and I know the work that you and your team are doing, Rhiannon, helping people to identify and own up to what they consciously feel. But the thing about emotions is they're different from feelings. They're things you can name depending on your emotional literacy and your experience and your language and culture. But physical stuff. We're talking minds and bodies here, because emotions reflect actual physical states of the body, not just the brain. That is why, as well, allowing children to move or to, not just be sitting in one place. We have adapted classrooms a lot since I was a teacher a long time ago. But here we come to one of the biggest things it's a myth that it's genetic. Nothing is purely genetic. Genes don't do anything on their own. And nutrition, but also exercise and sleep, and even the air we breathe and the substances, environmental stuff, all of that can influence how our genes are expressed. So I'm coming back to this power of labels. Diversity is a good thing. It's absolutely essential. And these conditions, I prefer to call them conditions, because that tells you as well that they can change. That is a good thing. We need it. Diversity, everything. It's part of nature. It's what allows human beings to survive at all, is to cooperate and to support each other. But feeling misunderstood, feeling isolated or stigmatized or excluded, well, that's not good. But that, as we know, is all too often what happens to children who are different. Delays, I want to focus on this one because age and stage really matter. And some people have called it scandalous that it's a bit strong, but it is the case that your chances of getting an ADHD diagnosis if you're a child born in August as opposed to September, yeah. So again, experienced teachers are well able to judge, what is age appropriate, what is not, but our diagnostic systems often ignore that. And we've always got to remember, development is lifelong. So again, whatever went on in early life, it's never too late, although there are some critical periods when it would help. And then I think these labels are not helpful. Disorders, disabilities, let alone deficits, always the focus on what's wrong with the child or adult. Now, of course, these have to be part of the diagnostic labels, because unless there is some disability, why is it that we should be providing any extra resources, support, adjustments? Now, in physical conditions, I think most people recognise if, you've got a problem moving your legs, or, there's been an injury or an accident or some condition, then yeah, you need a wheelchair, you might need crutches. But appropriate support and adjustments are just as needed for the hidden disabilities. And disability, there are strengths and weaknesses. Everybody's got strengths and weaknesses, and trying to get children and parents to recognise that a disability, well, everyone, as I say, has got abilities in some areas and disabilities, in others. But if your disability is that you're tone deaf, never be a musician, well, it's not going to exclude you from education in the way that dyslexia can if it's not recognised. And likewise, behavioural conditions, ADHD, autism, they come in different degrees of severity. Some of them will just grow out of it and adjust without help, because we're on to the, just wait, just postpone. Early recognition. And the earlier the better, before children arrive at school when they're not actually school ready, is something that policymakers need to help us with. But treatment of any underlying medical and health conditions, recognition, understanding, and the right support. And Rhiannon, these lovely qualities that and I so applaud the work you are doing, getting into schools and showing that with the right teaching, with the right support, confidence, determination, resilience, these are utterly modifiable, but they're fragile. And any child's confidence can be destroyed if they're always told they're being lazy or careless or stupid. So although I have lots of queries about these labels and they have their flaws, it's far better to have a label like ADHD and for that not to be stigmatised than to have your confidence undermined and so on. And we need the diversity for teamwork. But I want to come to this leadership. Not every child wants to be a leader, and it wouldn't be good if they all did. So we must, and I know you do, teach children and the adults that it is all about teamwork, recognising that each individual has got something to contribute. And here we come to what are often the absolute strengths of what we now call really children and adults on the spectrum. I'm just going to give the single example of Albert Einstein. He gets claimed now for the autism camp, the dyslexia camp, the ADHD, you name it. But he didn't learn to talk until he was about 4 or 5. He didn't learn to read until he was about 9. If he hadn't had a mother who completely believed in him and kept teaching him, his first job was teaching, but he was sacked for his poor spelling, right? But there's no question, minds come in different kinds. They've all got something to contribute, so we need to work with the children we have and try to support them as best we can. Now, trying to recognise the family history often gives clues, and many parents, they only recognise their own ADHD or dyslexia or autism in the broadened type when their child is having difficulties. But my main message here, look, genes, they might load the gun, as the saying goes, but environmental factors pull the trigger. Genes don't do anything on their own. They can't. It's always nature and nurture. So let's focus on what we can modify, shall we? Because there are no single genes for any of these conditions, whatever some of the media adverts might make you think. I'm also going to flag the sex differences because there's no question there is an excess of males who qualify for these labels of ADHD, autism, dyslexia. It is a real difference, but it's much, much smaller than they used to think it was, because the girls, they profile differently, they have often gone unrecognised, etc. But hormonal effects on the brain and body, this again is why things can change over time. These are influenced by, again, environmental factors, including nutrition. That's quite a big one. And interestingly, for my line of research, I became known as the lady who, fish oils, are good for it. Well, I'll come to that. Omega-3 and the long-chain omega-3 found in fish and seafood, yeah, they do make a difference to everyone's brain and body health, and they're missing from most people's diets, but males are more vulnerable than females is an interesting one. And then we come to the birth history. What we used to do in our dyslexia research clinic, where I began decades ago, we would always ask about this, and it's absolutely shown that, yeah, if you're born too soon, you are going to be at higher risk for all of these neurodevelopmental conditions. But again, early life nutrition can make a big difference there. And we have the evidence already. Our charity and many others are trying to get this put into practice. Giving fish oils in pregnancy reduces preterm birth. The evidence is in, but they're not doing anything about it yet. Now, allergies and autoimmune conditions, other physical, I've already mentioned the co-occurring, the gut, pain, because children with ADHD, it was known decades ago, they have more stomach aches, headaches, somatic symptoms. Again, the gut, the brain, and the immune system all work together. But it just raises the suspicion that referral to join one of those waiting lists for a full assessment. That's actually what every child needs, but we need to get this built into both preschool and school, in my opinion, and many others. Sensory processing, reactivity to stress, emotional dysregulation, sleep problems. These are outside the core diagnostic features of ADHD, which focuses on the impulsivity and the hyperactivity and so on. And the attention, which isn't a deficit, by the way, but there are differences there. All of these issues, again, there are possible nutritional contributions, but they need checking out, and whatever can be done to reduce sources of stress, including, of course, dealing with any of the things, environmental, classrooms, trying to minimize the kind of disruptions that for some children will overload their systems. Now, the analogy shown here between, I'm back on this, genetics. No, it isn't just genetics. You can have a seed, but I think we all know the soil it's planted in. But also, these are the metaphors, and it isn't just family love and social learning. It's what you fabulous teachers do, as opposed to if there is chaos, strife, poverty, disadvantage, you get a very different outcome. Why do we ignore these things and have so many children now whose families are struggling, and food banks and everything else because the nutrient deficiencies? It's more than 20 years ago now, and it was the Times educational supplement, but a rotten way to feed the children was the headline. It's got worse, not better. And they were predicting then, look, we're way past 2020 and it's happened. The big increase in developmental and mental health problems, all of these conditions. Modern diets play a huge role, just as they do in the physical health conditions that have become so common. And it's the same mechanisms. And we know that too much sugar and refined carbs, artificial additives, the wrong fats, and I'm going to say something about that, but very fast, and too little fibre. So again, for a healthy gut, not enough of the right nutrients and so on. All of these things are still being ignored. And food in schools, I know this varies greatly, but I'm going to invite all of you to take advantage of some special offers from our charity if you want to find out more about the things I'm covering here at 90 miles an hour. Improving nutrition was shown more than 20 years ago. You can reduce antisocial and aggressive behaviour by more than a quarter just by giving a multivitamin and mineral and some basic fats that should be in your diet and would be if you ate fish, but almost nobody does anymore. Violence reduced by nearly 40%. This got ignored. It was picked up in the Netherlands. Other trials have been done. They found the same thing. If you feed children and adults better. And just last year, absolute systematic review of nearly 30 controlled trials. Omega-3 alone, the long-chain omega-3 from fish and seafood, can reduce aggression, whether it's reactive, whether it's proactive. Doesn't matter about the age, the condition, but again, we're trying to get this put into practice, but policymakers tend not to get it. The basics for learning and well-being. I feel I'm talking to people who already know most of this. And there is one of the books by one of the functional medics. Why isn't all medicine functional? It should be. Relax, Eat, Move, Sleep is the title of his book, because these are the basics. But I think we know they're a lot easier said than done. How do you help a child with panic attacks, anxiety to relax in the classroom with difficulty? Eating depends on the school food policy, depends on the parents. Moving, oh, please, can we have more priority for play and movement and action and so on? And then sleep. And I'm going to whiz through this. Sleep, we're all suffering from. Some stages in our lives, not enough sleep. Quantity and quality matter. It affects physical and mental health and all the everyday difficulties, but it is particularly important in conditions like ADHD, autism, etc. It's complicated because all these links work both ways, so prove it. But I want to point up the Sleep Charity. They have fantastic resources here, and when they surveyed teachers, bless you for listening and coming in at the end of your busy day to this. Yeah, teachers know that, about a quarter, yep, I have to let tired children sleep in a corner of my classroom. And it's affecting their long-term progress in teachers' opinions. And about half felt it makes them, worse in their behaviour and so on. Thing is, we're not doing enough. Again, this is the health visitor role. It's the public health. We need to do more to make sure that parents really do recognise that, 3-year-olds need 12 hours sleep a night. And it goes down a bit, but even teenagers, unless they get 8 or 9 hours a night, they're not going to be functioning optimally. And we just ignore this. 24/7, and then the screen time. I'm whizzing through this. You all know, of course you do, that the time that young children and adolescents in particular spend on their phones, etc. And the policies, I know many schools are doing everything they can to raise awareness and give them something better to be interested in. Lack of sleep, though, it's needed to detox the brain. They didn't even know this till about 10 or 15 years ago. 2012, they found, we've got a plumbing system in the brain that literally only in deep sleep do you flush out the toxins. Next up, I think we've always known that, sleeping on it helps consolidate memory and learning. And I won't go into the brain circuits. We've got a whole webinar on this that I will make available, Rhiannon, to the schools who, bless, have taken the time here. It affects emotional regulation. Of course it does. And feeling, sleep deprived makes people rather more likely to be suffering even more from anxiety, depression, and so on. And it's a key feature as well of problems with children. But this study, oh boy, across individuals and groups and societies, lack of sleep makes us less pro-social and more anti-social. This isn't good. We've got to get the basics like sleep and diet embodied into everything. And I know good schools try and do that as best they can with not enough resources. Restless sleep, to be honest, was right in there in the very first ADHD label. But then they removed it. And it's taken a while for research to explode here, but I'm just going to say, ADHD, autism spectrum is the same. They're more likely to have sleep problems, and sometimes those have a medical, physical reason. Other times it's psychological, but wherever possible, try to get parents and teachers and so on to do what they can to raise awareness, get referrals, because we've also got the link, proven, and this is again a clinical trial, they systematically influence children's sleep just by 1 hour. And when you haven't slept well enough, guess what? You eat more junk food. So lack of sleep makes children eat. It was, no question, the cakes, biscuits, chips, crisps. When children are sleep deprived, they're going to be more likely to eat the junk. Now, this was where the computer, oh no, it is there. Even small changes, and this is another main message, little things can sometimes make a big difference. Now, nutrition and diet, I'm going to whiz through very fast because I want to get your questions. Blood sugar. Look, we all know that, too much sugar isn't good for us, but yep, it's so delicious and some would say addictive. But yeah, we're back on the emotion and the mood, but also the cognition. Irritability, impulsivity, inattention, fatigue, high sugar diets, and particularly those sugary drinks, all make it worse. A blood sugar yo-yo. There's an optimal range for brain function to regulate your emotions, to be able to focus. And if you've got a child who, sugary stuff, overshoots, crashes again, overshoots, crashes, you're hardly going to be in the zone all day. So we already know inattention, concentration problems, fatigue, a supposed lack of willpower, all of these can be influenced by too much sugar, quite frankly, but individuals differ in how sensitive they are to this. But hangry, I think we know, is another one, that new word for the vocabulary. Now I'm coming to the fats. They are the single most important thing that almost everyone gets wrong. I'm not going to give you the detail here. I'm going to tell you the story. This man, listen to the food programme, Radio 4. It was a tribute to Professor Michael Crawford. At the age of 95 nearly, he is still going so strong, but in the 70s he warned, you're worried about heart disease now, brain disorders will be next, because he knew what most people still don't know. Your brain is 60% fat. So the fact that everyone still thinks, fat is bad and high, quality, not quantity. Some fats are essential. It's the long-chain omega-3 and 6. As we evolved, it was only when we industrialised that up went heart disease and so on, because we completely have changed the fats in our diets. We don't eat fish and seafood anymore. The seed oils, which we gather have been trending on TikTok for a long time, the details are complicated. You don't need the details. You just need to know that we have a big imbalance, and most people don't get enough omega-3 from fish and seafood, and they get far too much of omega-6, which can promote inflammation and blood clots, and that's why it's bad for your physical as well as your mental health. When I came into this field, nearly it's over 30 years ago, that I thought, right, move from teaching into research. Biochemical investigations in a child with dyslexia. There was one case report in the literature, but it was extraordinary, because this American doctor focused on the child, not the disorder or the deficit or the disability, because he said the stakes are very high and the risk or cost is low. Let's consider anything that might help, because this child's difficulties had not responded to the special teaching and so on. But he just looked at the child. He calls it the mirror test. He had dry, patchy, dull skin and rough, dry hair that was straw-like instead of silky. He had dandruff. And the skin on the backs of his arms, tiny closed bumps like chicken skin. We've all seen it. We may have it. But soft fingernails. Yeah.
Can I just check everyone can still hear Dr. Alex?
Oh, has the sound gone?
Yeah, we just seem to have a little issue there.
Oh,
I just
no.
wanted to check that everyone else. Just tell me in the chat. Okay, it sounds like everyone else can still hear. That's fine.
Oh, good. Oh, dear. I'm so sorry. And I'll whiz through and then we'll get to some Q&A, okay? But the soft fingernails.
Sorry, Dr. Alex.
Oh, not at all. Anyway, IT. But yeah, these are things that teachers and parents, if they know what to look for, these are all fatty acid deficiency signs. And when this child was simply given the right fats, The improvement in his schoolwork coincided with the return of lustre and texture to his skin and hair. And I love this one, that if he'd been a Cocker Spaniel, his family would have accepted that his glossy coat and his, better mood, they went together. And the child as well understood why it was that a bit more of this and a bit less of that. And he finished up telling his grandma that dandruff was the cause of his dyslexia. Now, that's not quite the case, but some of these things, they get overlooked. We have got checklists for these and fact sheets we can share, because early research of mine showed, oh gracious, a quick little checklist. Yep, that'll predict, it'll give you a rough and ready on reading, working memory and dyslexic children. It went with visual symptoms, auditory language problems, speech. Good gracious, something as simple as getting the facts right can make a big difference. Oops. And you have to do controlled trials, and that's exactly what I did quite a long time ago. This trial, it's our most famous, the Oxford-Durham study. Now, our diagnosis was dyspraxia, but we gave the children that label. They were just underachieving kids in mainstream primary schools. We were the ones, and our team, who showed, yeah, they meet criteria. They are in the, very poor with their hand-eye coordination, balance, etc. But 40% would have met criteria for dyslexia. They hadn't been identified as such. 30% were in the clinical range for their ADHD. And when we gave them it was basically fish oils with a dash of evening primrose, the improvements in just 3 months, 9 months gain in reading, 6 months gain in spelling. This was a placebo-controlled trial. These aren't just significant statistically, they're meaningful. These kids were catching up. The placebo kids falling further behind. Attention and behaviour improved, and other people have shown this too. This is every individual line and spot here is an individual trial. The data are in that you can reduce symptoms, if we want to call them that, of inattention, hyperactivity, impulsivity, whether it's clinical or school populations. We've got the studies, but it isn't being put into practice. And evening primrose oil is a little detail we won't go into here. Omega-3 also, we were the first to show, and again, it was a controlled trial. It was school kids. Half of the children who were underperforming, and that's all they were, no diagnoses, they had clinical level sleep problems, but just one of the fats from fish oil improved their sleep. And we even had objective measures in a subset where it was an hour more sleep. That makes a difference. We are even now doing further studies to try to replicate that, but fish and seafood, which almost no one eats anymore, and 9 out of 10 of the children in the study I've just shown you weren't eating enough fish. And it isn't just these omega-3, it's a host of other things that are absolutely key. And we have webinars to tell you more about each one and how one can try, whether it's school meals or whether it's packed lunches, etc., to do something about it. The dietary changes that would help, but we need that something gets done about this at the public health level. Less ultra-processed, but that's a big category. More fish and seafood and those Mediterranean-type diets. But I want to give you here the things which we can't prove every single one of them, but the patterns from our experience, clinical, educational, etc. Visual symptoms are a good clue to will omega-3 help. Attentional problems, we're less sure about the hyperactivity per se. Emotional mood swings across the board, and in fact, omega-3 is an effective add-on treatment for depression in adults. Now, what it is that anxiety, mood swings and so on, they can have many causes, but why don't we do the easy things of see whether a bit more sleep and a better diet might help. Sleep problems themselves are a good predictor, particularly not getting to sleep on time and then oversleeping. That seems to be, it's the owls rather than the larks. And allergies as well is another good predictor. Now, vitamins and minerals, again, it's scandalous that so many of our children are lacking things we know to be essential. And we need all essential nutrients. They are just that, but again, it's a public health issue. And individual ones, we've got fact sheets, which again, sign up when I give you the e-alert code. Sign up for our free e-alerts, and we'll give you some fact sheets on some of these things that may be helpful to some of you yourselves, as well as the children you teach and their parents. Clinical trials have shown, to be honest, that if you just give with children who have both ADHD and irritability, meltdowns, emotional dysregulation, then half of them, just over half, as opposed to 18% who didn't get the supplements, improved. And this book, The Better Brain, I can't recommend highly enough. We've got, again, book lists we can share with you. And finally, this gut-brain immune system and all of the allergies. Why are they so common now? Toxins and poor diets. But there are lots of things in these categories that can be unpacked. But this is more an issue for health than it is for education. But yeah, stress, anxiety, depression, sleep problems, they go with gut problems, allergies, chronic pain. And these things are so much more common in children on the spectrum. And again, diet is a big one. But so are medications. Some of those can upset the gut. Antibiotics obviously can. So big issues here. One which I am disappointed that this still isn't even in any nice guidelines for ADHD, but that's because it isn't just children with ADHD who benefit if you remove the artificial food colourings. It's been shown, the evidence is there, but little warnings in the small print on the labels, but nothing that really helps reduce these in diets of many of the children who you'll be trying to deal with their behaviour and their learning and mood problems, and their parents are blithely unaware of the evidence we've got. So what can you do and where can you start? I'm going to answer your questions here because my final slides got wiped out with a computer crash. Labels can help, and we need them, of course we do, to try to provide the support and those send statements, etc., but never define any individual by their label, because they're very rough and ready. The label is not the person, nor is the condition. And what works for one person may not suit others. This is not recognised when we put them all into the same bucket and say this is ADHD or dyslexia. Overall, diet, lifestyle and educational opportunities. These are what matter most, and support. And inclusion rather than exclusion, bullying and all the things that anti-social media does to children now. And even small changes. I really want to encourage you. We have seen this time and again. Every little helps, as one of the supermarkets says. Sleep, diet, exercise, but it is having someone who believes in you, being recognised and not shamed for your differences. And we have special offers available on all of the many webinars that we can discuss this later so that you can share them later. But diet and dyslexia, you know, the role of food and diet, you know, better mood, behaviour, learning and sleep, forget the labels. And selective eating, which is a big issue for many children now and adults. So I'm going to urge you, please sign up for the free e-alerts. There's one of these lovely QR codes here, but I hope that Rhiannon will be able to share the link. And if you are able to join us, and we've got group memberships for charities, schools and so on, we want this information to get out there. We at Fab Research has been doing what we do for, oh my God, well over 20 years now, and I've been doing it for many years before that. So thank you so much for your attention on what I know is another busy, overloaded day. If we've got time for questions, I am more than happy to take them, but I'm going to be putting out an invitation to you all for some of our, over the summer and into September, some of our Fab webinars, so you can attend those for free. Thank you.
Yeah, I can hear. Thank you so much, Alex.
Oh, sorry for the...
No, that's fine. If you can bear with me, I had technical issues as well. My computer went into hibernation doing that.
IT just does it, doesn't it? And we all know.
There we go. I'm just going to try and pull mine back up. If it doesn't come up, no worries, though.
Oh.
There we go. So, yeah, a huge thank you, Alex. What a massive insight that was there into lots of the reasons why I think we're seeing a lot more children with some of these conditions coming through schools. I know that's when I go out in school, like that's a conversation I've had actually with quite a lot of members of staff. It's like the ratio of, children with lots of neurodiverse conditions seem to be, a lot higher. There we go.
They are. There is a real increase, and it isn't just, oh, we're just paying too much. No, it's a real increase, although there is better identification. Some of them, plenty of them, used to go under the radar. But yeah.
Right, I'm just going to quickly say then, I'm sure you'll all join me in saying a huge thank you to Dr. Alex Richardson for sharing her expertise and providing some insight into recognising some of the causes really of lots of neurodiverse conditions. And I don't know about anyone else, but it's given me a bit of an insight into my own children and into my own, I suppose, of my own lifestyle with my own children, as well as
okay, good.
children in school. But it gives us a real idea of like all children come from very different backgrounds, and they come into us in school, and lots of these things aren't in place in their homes. So
exactly.
Thank you for your time. That's amazing. Just a quick thing then, if anyone's got any questions, I know Tracy has been monitoring some of the questions through chat. I think you're all right to ask a few to Dr. Alex, Trace.
I know Stephen's asked, this is more about the impact of parents who do not want to parent, that they're looking to be more the child's best friend.
Oh, yes. That's, again, the media have encouraged far too much of this, but parents need to be parents now. I've got a whole other presentation on this, of the different styles of parenting. One needs to be authoritative, setting boundaries, being prepared, to say no, but to explain. Now, again, we have plenty of resources, and I'm sure you yourselves, have got access to some workshops from the people who really know about working with families in order to get parents to recognise that, look, being your child's best friend and agreeing to everything, this doesn't help. But at the same time, the way in which one sets boundaries. And it's all too easy. And the media, and putting a child in front of a screen as the babysitter, this isn't on. I have to say, the screen time thing, I lost. It was in the presentation before it crashed. There is a fabulous book by a lady who came out in the same year as my They Are What You Feed Them. Oh, Toxic Childhood. Sue Palmer, brilliant primary school teacher who, again, absolutely outlined in different chapters with excellent tips on what can be done about this. But the social media, back then it had hardly got going. Where it's at now and what children are, it's a great way to keep them quiet. It can be an aid to learning, but I do wish they would do more, the government and policymakers, than they're doing. The social media companies know exactly what they're doing, as they're hooking children into things that aren't good, let alone the time they're taking up. So we do need, as I say, action at every level. But the parents, what I can't bear is every time I see, parents out with children, it might be one parent, it might be both, or whoever, but they are looking at their own screens, and the children, they need your attention, and they need, that time and interaction. So thank you for that question.
Yeah, I was going to say, Alex, sorry to interrupt you. I was going to say that in terms of like how a school might address this, obviously, you can't control what's going on at home. You can only control what's going on in the classroom with you. So having this insight into some of the reasons, you know your demographics, you know your parents, but maybe holding those workshops within a school might be a really good idea.
Yes, it would, and we do a lot of this, and I've done plenty of it in my decades in this field. Thing is that whenever you mention diet or something, it was always like the old Monty Python, and now for something completely different. But yeah, doing workshops, and because eating, you see, and sleeping are things which we all have to try to do each and every day.
I think we totally underestimate the power of what we're putting into our bodies, don't we? And the way I think we've evolved over the years, everything's fast food,
exactly,
fast life, fast everything. I just think, again, it's like re-educating, isn't it? It's a massive task. And
It is, but I wish they would. I mean, again, if I were Rachel Reeves, good Lord, just stick a tax on food advertising. We know that, 98% of it is for foods that are doing them no good at all, and ban it in some places, as they've done in the London. These things do have an impact. It is the entire environment that, needs rethinking.
I can see a couple of comments came from, I think it was from Christchurch School, was about things like, banning phones, having a little bit more boundaries with phones in schools, educating parents, in order to have those boundaries at home with mobile phones. I know it seems to be just an easy babysitting tool, isn't it? And
this is it, you see, and again, the 24/7 lifestyle and so much of this is because of the stresses that parents and everybody else and teachers have been under as well. It is all too easy to just think, oh crikey, need a bit of peace, quiet. But the addictive nature of the social media technology, and also the foods. There's a conference coming up in September. Some foods are addictive for some people, and just as with alcohol, not everyone exposed to alcohol gets addicted to it. Most folk don't get addicted to opioids when they have to have them for medical reasons. Do you know what I mean? But we
promoting this healthy schools. I know years ago it was a massive thing, promoting healthy schools. I remember in the school I was in was, they'd monitor, packed lunches and, making sure certain things weren't allowed in schools in order to try and keep the children as healthy as possible. And I know, again, somebody just said from Christchurch about making sure that school dinners are improved. Just those small things, I think that potentially that we could maybe look at doing.
They would make a huge difference. Now, when my first research trials were coming out, Jamie Oliver was trying to do his, to get rid of the turkey Twizzlers, get real. But it just keeps slipping back again, and we've just got to stop ignoring the fundamentals. Relax, eat, move, sleep. We need,
think, a lot of the issues I know that teachers will have is that we seem to be governed quite a lot. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn. We seem to be governed quite a lot by what the parents want, as opposed to what you want to establish within your school, your own school. It seems to be, wherever you do, there's always somebody knocking on the door saying, I don't agree with this and I don't agree with that. So I definitely think that's a bit of a barrier for them. But
I'm glad you flagged that, Rhiannon, because I get feedback like that all the time from teachers. Come on, we need to allow the teachers and the schools to do what works and what they know works for that school, and not, I suppose it's part of turning everyone into clients or customers, but it doesn't help to abandon some of the basics, which really are basics, again, to do with boundaries, to do with health, because physical and mental health go together. And if you've got parents who are almost, and again, the aggression and violence one, we had a fab webinar on this just last week, and you can reduce aggression by 30% across the board.
That's huge. Can I just say, I know
been shown in control trials.
Time, Alex. I don't want to cut you off. I know we're running out of time. And, I just want to say a massive thank you to you. I found that really valuable. And I know we're going to share some of the, the book references and some links. We're going to send them on to the schools. We'll also send the presentation on as well to those who haven't been able to.
I was just going to say, and because this wasn't quite the final presentation I was hoping for before the computer, we will make resources available, okay? And no question, we want to keep working with you and your wonderful team, Rhiannon, because Fab Research, we've always, come on, everybody needs to work together here, and nobody has got a full solution, but we need everyone cooperating and everyone, fulfilling all those lovely enterprise skills that you go in and teach. They're basic self-care, self-help, and make society better skills.
Yeah, one last thing I wanted to just say to everybody then is, again, thank you so much for joining. I know your time is very, very precious, but we are hoping, this is only our second CPD training course. We're hoping to do more. We're looking to put on the next one on in November. So November the 11th is a provisional date. We don't quite have everything secure yet, but when we do, we'll let you know and we'll keep you updated on that. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you again, Dr. Alex Richardson, and we'll see you all in schools very, very shortly. Have a good evening, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you.
you for sparing your time for attending. Thanks.